All right. This is amazing. Okay. Let's do this. All right, guys. So, welcome everybody again. This is the moment, and I'm going to have an amazing conversation here. Um, I don't know if I should say with my brother, but I'm going to let him in and we're going to start the conversation. Okay.
Hi.
Hello. Hello,
Hi.
Jeff.
Pleased to meet you.
It's an honor to meet you, sir. I want to say thank you so much for coming in today. Um, First of all, I didn't expect, to have this conversation with you because I just started to talk to you today, like
Yeah.
couple minutes ago, and you were generous enough to accept to come and have this conversation. So I really appreciate.
Yeah, but you're pushy the way I am. You go, can you do it now? Can you do it today? Can you do it this minute? And that's the way I used to do interviews. It's like, can you talk to me now? When can you talk to me? Okay, well, that's actually, it surprisingly works a lot of times.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're using my
And
methods.
yeah, and I understand you had another program just right before this, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
I I really appreciate. How did that went?
It went okay. It was the first. I've been interviewed many times before for my books and other things,
Yeah.
but it was the first time on this subject that a
Yes.
mainstream media operation actually interviewed me because
Yeah.
they've because of the way the narrative is going, it's very inconvenient what I have to say. So
Mhm.
nobody in the mainstream media likes to acknowledge what I'm doing. So they just
Yeah.
at one point, as I mentioned on that show,
Yeah.
there was a major. We can get into this, but there was a major scandal. I was the person
Mm.
who did the interviews for the scandal. Not
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the mainstream media came to talk to me, even though I
Mm.
pretty much was the person who got the story. And then
Mm.
when my name was listed once in an article, an
Mm.
activist named Simon Tesfamarian wrote to the reporter, said on Twitter, "Congratulations, you acknowledged that Jeff Pearce exists." The very next day, during a
Yeah.
follow-up article, the guy went out of his way to say the interviewer and not list who I was. So
Oh,
it's just I consider this
it's always like
progress
that.
that I actually got there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's an honor to see
Thank you.
you for the first time. I gotta be honest with you. I found out about you today. To be honest, today,
That's
and
fine.
I went through your tweets. I saw a lot of things that you're talking about. It's just fascinating to see your view and your perspective about Africa. And I think I was so drawn to that. And I realized that a lot of people that I have here on One Africa Forum, they actually know you because you have been speaking about Ethiopia for a long time, right? For a long time, and Africa in
Yeah.
general. So my first question that I would like to know from you, like, to how do you get that interest in Africa and specifically right now in Ethiopia issues?
Well, this is the hilarious part. Was when I was very poor and living in the UK, I wound up. There's no secret about this. There's no great mystery to it.
Yeah.
It's actually a very funny story, and I can be. There's nothing to hide. I ended up
Mm,
writing erotica novels for
mm,
black women for a publisher while pretending to be a black woman
mm,
because I needed to keep my identity secret. At one point, the BBC wanted to interview me, and I couldn't because
mm.
so.
Yeah.
Um, and I said to a friend, we were driving away from Heathrow,
Mm,
and I said, I'd like to write something for black people that didn't involve heavy breathing every 20 pages. And I
mm,
had an idea about
mm,
an African American who goes to fight in an African war. And
mm,
my friend said to me, well, that actually happened to someone once. And that's all
mm,
he knew. And what it
mm.
turned out to be was this was the years of the early internet. And
Yeah.
so to tighten the story up, it
Mm,
turned out that I was looking for John Robinson, who's known as the Brown Condor. John
okay.
Robinson is an amazing figure in Ethiopian history and also in
Mm,
African American history because he pretty much was one of the founders of the Tuskegee Airmen. And then he went
mm,
off to Ethiopia and
mm,
helped build their air force. And contrary to myth, they had no mounted guns, so he basically escaped Italian planes just by barnstorming and being able to fly better. And when the Allies, after the Allies liberated the country, he came back and helped found Ethiopian Airlines, the very airline that is like the pride and joy of the country and serves a good portion of the continent. Getting back to me, all I could find out about this guy was very scant information because it was the early internet. You just couldn't. And I ended up writing a very bad novel, which fortunately didn't sell because it was terrible. And I've written others which are better. But as I learned more about the war, I became fascinated by this because the Italian-Ethiopian War, the Second War, really is a movie. It really has a three-part structure where you go, here's this colonial power that invades Ethiopia, and the equivalent to the UN, the League of Nations, all go, oh, well, that's very sad. And they basically screw them over and abandon them. And so now these people are left to fight on their own. They face poison gas. They face bombing of hospitals. There were atrocities. And yet these people ended up, they stuck it out. Most history books that you see talk about the war ending in 1936. It didn't. What happened was it entered the insurgency phase where what's known as the, hopefully I'm pronouncing this probably, Arbanoch, the Patriots, went into the mountains, and there was a resistance within Addis Ababa, and they carried on the fight for years. And so I researched all this, and I found amazing things. I spoke to a wonderful gentleman who's become a friend, a former ambassador named Imru Zeleke. And this man saw what's known as the Graziani Massacre as a boy of 12 years old. He's on the second floor of his house watching Italian fascists go door to door, burning people alive in their homes, clubbing them to death. And he saw that, and the very next day, he's taken to a concentration camp. There were 6,500 people, Ethiopians, put in concentration camps. Half of them died to neglect, disease, malnutrition, starvation. Half of them. 6,500. We never hear about that. And that is before the Holocaust. So, and there was a reporter named George Steer who wrote about the bombing of Harar. And he would later write about the bombing of Guernica. And he pointed out, he was published in the New York Times and the London Times of London. And he said, if they can do this to Africans, they will know that they can do this to Europeans. He told them, he said to them, this is what's in store for you in Europe if you don't knock it off and start helping African people. And that's the lesson. That's how the book came to be, because the story is just so fascinating. And of course, the Patriots win in the end. And this is, how often do you get to see a book where Africans win? You can go into a bookshop and you see all these books about famine, AIDS, conflict, corruption. How many books do you see? Because I can count like a couple on my hands, and one of them is my own. There's The Bright Continent, and there's mine. I can't think of another happy book off the top of my head about that. You know,
I'm gonna need to get your book too. I need to read that. I need to read. I want to ask you this another question about the current situation that is going on. It's very rare to find someone like you, someone who is from the West. Actually, I mean, someone from the West who actually standing with Ethiopia or standing with Africa, especially in this matter. Because how did you find out that everything that is going on right now is the truth?
Well,
because that's what you're right now.
Your picture's frozen, so all I hear is your voice at the moment. You're sort of frozen, smiling at me. So I'll just take it.
All right.
But the fact of the matter is how that came about is, and I should preface this by saying, my position doesn't make me any nobler than any other person. I'm a human being. And the thing is, I don't understand why more people aren't out there like me having these views. I went to a demonstration on Friday in support of Ethiopia across from the U.S. consulate, and I'm the only one of two white faces. Another guy was from an organization who knew peace organization who knew very little about the conflict, so he just showed up. But I'm the only person who was white at this demonstration. I'm going, this is pitiful, because in 1935, the entire world, there were protests and marches in London, Paris, New York City for Ethiopia. We should have the same thing now. So my position doesn't make me better than other people. I wish more people had the damn common sense. We know that this is the truth because, for one thing, I've been there. I went in August. I was sent by 2 organizations, one of which was a Canadian Ethiopian diaspora organization called ECNUS. And they said, very honestly, they said, all we want is the truth. You know, they can take it. They can take it. They've been through, Ethiopia has been through terrible tragedies and wars after the imperial era when Haile Selassie was dethroned by Marxist psychopaths who went on to slaughter 500,000 people. But when the conflict started, the hashtag Tigray genocide was used November 4th, the very day that the war started. How do you have a genocide when it's not even started yet? How do you do that? There was a calculated disinformation campaign planned, and these people, because I had commented on Ethiopian affairs and because I wrote books, said, why don't you talk about Tigray genocide? Why don't you talk about Tigray genocide? And they kept hassling me online. And that is a wonderful way to motivate me to dig into your shit. So I went digging. And what I found was, oh, you are a terrorist organization which is morphed into a Russian-style oligarchy and morphed into a cult. And there's a video that you can find easily, which has a gentleman who is a TPLF spokesman who went on television, on Tigrayan television, said, of course we struck first. Of course we have. Well, there you go. And their logic now is, because now they call it a preemptive strike. Well, I studied martial arts for about 10 years. I still hold a black belt in Shotokan karate and basic self-defense. I haven't trained in years, so I'm a flabby mess. But my point is, you're right to hit someone. You don't get to hit someone because you think the other guy's going to hit you until he actually makes a move to hit you. You're not allowed to hit him. You know, this is basic. And since that, we've seen these people lie repeatedly. They have an army of trolls. They spend millions on a lobby organization while they claim that their people are starving. The numbers, by the way, for what they claim are starving or on the brink of famine do not make any sense. That's been debunked by an academic named Lawrence Freeman. I have no doubt that there are some people who are in desperate situations there, but there is their position on this is nowhere close to reality. They have made up atrocities out of whole cloth. And I call it the atrocity du jour, because every week there's a new thing to try to claim that the Ethiopian government is doing.
That brings me to this another question. What do you think is their motives? Because I think about it all the time, but I can't get an answer. What do you think is the motive behind that? Behind all the lies spread out?
Power. Flat out power. People don't understand that the TPLF ruled Ethiopia for 27 years. They are very into revisionist history. They like to claim, there was a gentleman who was on our national network over here, CBC, and he was spinning the same yarn of saying, oh yes, they're repressive, but they made an economic miracle. I'm sorry, no and no. Just because you are crushing human rights doesn't let you off the hook for whatever you're doing economically. And besides, that's rubbish. The TPLF enriched themselves. They sent the children of senior officials off to schools abroad, so they got educations at some of the finest institutions. They invested their money in things like shopping plazas elsewhere. Everyone in Ethiopia knows this. It is a well-known fact, and the information backs it up, because some people, they don't have good research habits. And if you want to know how biased information is, look at the articles that predate 2020. And these articles are detailing the TPLF corruption right back to 2012, back to 1990s. So you look and go, okay, this is, and you measure it up. What they want is power. They started the conflict claiming that it was a response to Ethiopian government aggression, but in fact, that is a lie. We know this is a lie because there are skilled and respected academics like Ann Fitzgerald of the Vasili Institute who interviewed dozens of Northern Command soldiers who experienced what was going on, the November 3rd and 4th attacks, when certain officers and soldiers betrayed their fellow soldiers and stabbed them in the night in their own beds, shot them. There were skirmishes to rush for weapons, and they attacked 5 military outposts all at once. That's a coordinated attack. Only a couple of days later, around November 6th, not November 9th as reported, Tigrayan landlords and neighbors had already told Amhara workers for them, you can't leave. And they also didn't pay them. They delayed their pay, but they had to still work. And on the violence towards them started November 6th, which was part of what's called the Massacre Massacre. And so this was well coordinated. And had things continued, had the TPLF made military gains after it, I have no doubt you will have seen a real bloodbath going on. But the ENDF forces stopped them, just beat their asses all the way to the point where we had the temporary government and occupation of Mekelle until the withdrawal of the ceasefire. So it's power. It's not about liberating Tigray, because Tigray, if you went to Tigray today, you would see people who are as poor as anywhere else. In fact, even poorer than some parts of Amhara or Wallo that you can go to. Tigray has very little useful agricultural land. One reporter I know took a photojournalist took a photo of a guy plowing a field of rocks. And you look at this going, oh my God, like they're not kidding. This is hard. So they would like to run the country again. It's simple as that.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to ask you this question before I bring somebody. I believe he has a question for you as well.
Sure.
And what is your thought? How do we get out of this? In order for, I know for us here at One Africa Forum, we always, preach and talk about, unifying Africa, because that it seems to be the only solution of us getting out of so many issues and so many humiliations that for long times Africa have been facing against Western and Eastern as well. But in this particular situation right now in Ethiopia, how do we get out of this?
Well, my take, as much as I'm smeared and portrayed as having links to the Ethiopian government, I don't. I have no connection to the Ethiopian government, so I'm speaking my own mind. I frankly believe, and I intend to go back. I'll be getting in touch to see if I can get fundraising and logistic support to go back, because I can't endorse a war for which I'm not going to be there at least part of the time to be in the conflict zone to say, okay, I'm with you. That would be contempt. And for a whole year, there have been TPLF trolls and others who sit on the sidelines, go, well, and they cheer on this, and they're nowhere near the danger. And I never got into any serious danger there, but I was in conflict zones and others. At one point, there was apparently TPLF coming up the road, and we had to get the hell out of a shooting that was near my Kedra. But how we get out of this, frankly, is the U.S. has got to back off and let Ethiopia do its thing. We did not hear this kind of bullshit when ISIS was running roughshod over Syria and parts of Kurdistan. I went to the Kurdish front in 2015. I stood 2 kilometers away from an ISIS-held village. Did you ever hear ISIS saying, they cut off our power, they cut off our electricity, we don't have banking services? Really? You ever hear another terrorist organization whining like that?
Yes.
You are dealing with the equivalent of Nazis. If you listen to their propaganda, these individuals actually claim with a straight face that they were the precursors
Mm.
to Egyptian and Nubian culture and influenced other cultures in the Middle East. Any archaeologist
Mm.
or historian worth their salt will say, really? And your evidence is, and they don't have any because it's propaganda. It right in their founding documents, in their manifesto of 1976, talks about wiping out the Amhara people. This is a equivalent to a Nazi-style sort of variety of terrorists, which held power for 27 years. They're the ones that introduced the identity card system, which is pretty much apartheid in other African countries. How you get rid of them is you have to beat them militarily. There is just, I'm sorry, there's no other choice. And I can't be like, I have very liberal sensibilities, but I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, they should all talk. No, you didn't sit down to talk with ISIS. And when the Americans sat down to talk with Taliban, look what we got. Look what we got in Afghanistan now, because they pulled out. So yeah, you got to wipe out these guys because they're honest, innocent Tigrayans who are also victims of this organization, which is forgotten. They should not be conflated with Tigray or Tigrayans. Now, part and parcel to that is, I think we have to widen the scope. Feltman is going around doing his little carrot and stick tour of the African Union regional offices. And I think today's in Kenya, or last report I heard he was in Kenya. And this is despicable because this is not what the African Union was ever founded to be for. It wasn't founded to be a wedge for U.S. policy to say, well, we'll go around and get you to coerce Ethiopia to do it. Screw that. We need a pan-African movement to say, get the hell out of our affairs.
Exactly.
Get the hell, and this goes, not to sort of go on and on, but part of parcel of this is, I am one of these people, and people first laughed at me and had a good joke over the fact that I started trying to build a campaign for defund, deplatform, deport Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Crisis Group, all these organizations, because they're politicized and they're not helping. They're the groups that are actually lying about some of these things going on, and they're not answerable to you. I have a similar. I never used to be a radical in terms of journalism, but my position is, you are there as a guest. You don't get, just because you get to report doesn't mean you get to lie about the country. And we've seen Western correspondents go in and just bullshit till the day is long about what's happening, claiming, oh, the TPLF are on the doorstep of Addis Ababa. No, they're not. They're 300 clicks away. And if you do that, you are a danger. You are a security threat to the country. If the U.S. and Europe have the right to deport a Russian spy who masquerades as a journalist, why is this right denied or frowned upon when an African country does it? You're based where? Sorry, where are you based?
I'm based in Tanzania. Right now, I'm in Tanzania.
Okay, so you're in Dar es Salaam? Okay.
Yes.
So I don't have to tell you, but maybe others who are watching this, you know how hard it is to be an African citizen and go travel abroad. You know, they make it so that even doctors, lawyers, diplomats have had trouble just trying to get to Europe for a conference because they treat Africa like a gulag. And you're looking at this going, this is blatantly unfair, and yet you get to send in your jackasses who are correspondents and then make up crap out of whole cloth about you. Is that a fair system? It's ridiculous. So we need to see wide-based reform, and the only way I think we do it is recognize the implications that this conflict has for the rest of Africa. Because if they can do it to Ethiopia, they will get away with doing it to Tanzania. They will do it to Kenya. They will do it to Sudan. They will do it to, they really would like to do it to Eritrea, and they'll go forward with this agenda, of destabilization.
Yeah, I really appreciate for your insight and thoughts. There's one question here from one of the One African Forum
Yeah.
um, member here. It said, "What do Western powers hope to get with their current Africa policy?"
What they've always hoped to get, as we've just discussed, the thing is, it's fine for companies to come in and just sort of scoop up the resources and then leave, but they don't want your
Mm,
people. Isn't that cute? Like, let's take your coffee, let's take your minerals, let's take your oil, let's make sure that your land is given over to crops that benefit
mm,
us.
yeah.
If you go to Ethiopia, you drive through and you see fields where you go, my God, this could be the
Mm,
breadbasket of a continent. Like, you could feed
exactly. Yeah.
millions,
Mm, mm,
and yet
mm,
there are people who are pockets where there's genuine uh,
mm,
starvation or near famine. Places you go,
mm,
why? And
mm,
because you have these rules and regulations and deals bargained. And I'm not saying that corruption doesn't exist in terms of certain
mm,
governments within Africa.
mm,
I'm saying that
mm.
the system is broken and is geared towards Western exploitation. Or as
Yeah.
somebody once put it to me, the colonizers never really left.
Mm.
They're still scooping up your resources. And
That's true.
so
Yeah. This is
who
in
does it
different
help?
form. Yeah.
Yeah, who does
Mm,
it help to have Ethiopia destabilized and let the TPLF back in? The very people
mm,
who liked them in the first place, Susan Rice, the people who were their pals,
mm,
um, back in the previous Democrat administrations.
mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate that. So I'm gonna allow my brother here,
Hmm.
Big E. I hope he has a question for you. The Chief, welcome to the show. It's good to have you. Can you hear me, Chief?
I see a big E.
Yes, sir. Big E is here with a small E. I'm
Welcome
just a
to the
little
show, my
squirrel
brother.
looking for a nut. Put it that way. Hey, Jeff,
Hi,
it's really, really great. Nice meeting you. Uh,
thank you.
I mean, you, you narrated it the way it is. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And my question is, you know, uh, journalists like you, that you know closely, the people that fight for the right issues, people that put the reason for the advancement of mankind. I don't think this is just about Africa, but you can see it in Middle East. You can see it all over. Right now, we're talking about just Africa, but there are a lot of people that are minded like you, that can push this issue and bring it out. As we push it, and eventually certain truth is going to come out of it. What can you help us into putting people like you that are really passionate about human right, with the right thing to do, and is there anybody that can connect us? Because this forum. I mean, it's just a beginning. It's a beginning of something new, and I was really clearly want to have people just like you, Jeff, that they can put them on our way. We have questions. It's a small group right now, but really this thing is going to get bigger. What can you help us with?
Well, first, as long as I'm invited, I think that's the first thing. I don't go where I'm not invited. The Ethiopians invited me in and let me cover, and that's a privilege to me. I don't,
Mm,
I do not believe in sticking my nose in where, unless somebody says, "Hey, we'd like your help or we'd like your opinion with this," whereas God knows there's no lack of people who want to stick their nose into African affairs who are not wanted. And I think there has to be a fundamental shift in the way we think about Africa. I wrote an entire book on this because it still rankled me. I mentioned minutes ago and said, there's only like maybe two good happy ending books about Africa that you can get on a bookshelf. So I've got a new book which will be coming out next year, which I hope you'll bring me back to talk about, Mika,
Mm, yes,
called The Gifts of
definitely.
Africa. And it's
Mm,
about the intellectual legacy that Africa gave to the world. Because
mm,
when you go to school, at least in the West, you learn about the Renaissance and you learn about the ancient Greeks. Why does nobody talk about, Ibn Battuta? Why does nobody talk about Steve Biko? Why does nobody ever talk about these other great thinkers, John Mbidi, the philosopher? Why does nobody ever talk about, I'm going to mispronounce his name, but he's a famous sculptor, the Nigerian sculptor who's just brilliant and famous, and was one of the writers who wrote in 1950s about returning African works of art back to Africa. And I found this article said, why is this not being taught in at least fine arts programs in schools all over the place? This is magnificent. Why don't we talk about that heritage? And so the thing is, we have to fundamentally shift our perspective in terms of these things. Why is it that we're in the age of Black Lives Matter, yet somehow it's still permissible to send people who look like me, often male, to go interpret Africa for the West? You got people there. Now, I'm not saying you can't, you can't have those voices, but why should the New York Times and Declan Walsh have a greater weight of his voice than, say, somebody like Mika? Why should the AP send Kara Anna, a white woman, to do this when you can get Ethiopian reporters? Now, part and parcel of that is it's not just about color, because there are fine Ethiopian reporters who are unfortunately beholden to the agenda of the BBC and the Associated Press and CNN. Nama Elbiger stood there during her address in the Carleton School of Journalism, said, and claimed, I'm paraphrasing here, the whole narrative of the Ethiopian government was undermined by the fact that she was a Black woman, an African reporter with ethnicity of but bullshit. I don't give a shit. She still works for CNN, and I still catch the lies that she's putting out there, and I don't care what her ancestry is. I don't care that she's a woman. What I care about is the final product of you bullshitting about what's going on in the country. So we have to fundamentally shift our thinking. We have to create opportunities, and we can start, number one, with reforming the journalism so that there's more equity. And I'm sort of stealing from a speech which I will give later, but the thing is, I would first and foremost say, if you're going to send a reporter from New York and London, you got to take one from Tanzania. You got to take one from Sudan. You want to go report on Botswana? Well, Botswana gets to have a reporter in France. Totally fair. Why don't you allow that? So we need to really shift. And when you run these issues by people, you can even see them stiffen up, and they don't have an answer for you because you can tell they haven't questioned their own thinking. And so, like, why do you think that you should be treated special? I'll give you another example very quickly. A reporter named Tom Gardner, and I'll name him now because screw him. He expected me to keep this conversation private, and then went and slagged me with TPLF trolls. So deal's off. I'll say this in no speech. He wrote a DM to me through Twitter and said, I'm paraphrasing again, don't you think it's kind of irresponsible for you to be criticizing Western media when the situation in Ethiopia is so volatile? That's essentially his message. And I read this and I thought, are you kidding me with this? This is in the 1930s where you can only get The Economist at the newsstand in London. You can go online and read. And plus, the perception is, ooh, the Africans might get scary because they read a media criticism. Really? We have media criticism in the West where you can get like Biden slag, Trump slag. Why should media criticism be less inspiring of violence there than it is in Africa? You see the difference.
Yeah. That's amazing. Biggie, if you have a follow-up question, one more question, I think it'll be amazing because there's a lot of questions in the chat as well. I'll jump right into them.
I mean, he covered pretty much on the journalism and all that, which is not my specialty, but like you said, if you really want to know about a country, you have to have the person that lives in that country
Mm-hmm.
to give you the fabric.
Yep.
And even the person talking is going to be talking with a full consciousness about what he's going to be talking about specifically for his country. And right now, coming back as an example, TPLF is using the propaganda machine. Uh, they doing it in the wrong direction, but something that we can learn, even though it's an adversary or something that we don't want. But I think we can use the same machine that they have, an idea, and how they are interweaved into the networks. Of course, it takes money. Of course, we're going to have to put a lot more investment into our PR, lobbying, and all that. And I think um, the Western, listen to another Westerner that went there, and yeah, he's reporting, but at the same time, he lives an opinion that creates this chaos. Well, I didn't know that. When a BBC journalist went to Eritrea and left his paperwork, his traveler's checks, and all that, including camera equipment, and he was so uh, into it, following people, questioning, and everything else, and he ended up by spending the night somewhere else. Okay, he was not near his car or anywhere. So the next morning, he just woke up and said, "Oh my God, my I'm gonna lose all my stuff." And the host told him, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, I left my camera and all that." He said, "Well, so what?" He said, "Well, they probably stole it." He said, "Not here." So he went back. He went back and found, he got dust on it because he had the window down. Other than that, he found everything, his cameras, his traveler check. Nobody touched anything from that car. And after he got so amazed about this situation, he said, his opinion, he said, this kind of weird, the word weird. Why not? You know, who told you that Eritrea is the safest place that you can walk at night? We have our girls walking around 4 o'clock in the morning. A gentleman will come in and say, "Hey, girls, you want us to walk you alone?" There's no fear. There's no robbery. There's no stealing. Maybe you might have petty thefts here and there. In the grand scheme of things, no. They don't want to lie to you. They are upfront. If he likes you, he's going to like you. If he doesn't like you, he's going to tell you upfront. So there's no violence. You get caught fighting. Guess what? The MP will come and beat the crap out of both of you, and you'll be in jail in the morning. You leave. And that's, they'll be talking now instead of fighting. There's a lot of things that change like that. So when the Western media sees that, they go, "Oh, this is kind of weird country." Why is it weird? So that's what I'm trying to say. If you don't have the person of the country representing and talking honestly what's going on, this is one of the examples where, Isaias is like that, he's going like that. I mean, it's just dictatorship. I mean, this guy, for God's sake, he drives a Corolla Toyota. His home is like open to anybody else. He took Prime Minister Abiy to his house, his residence, and his wife was not even ready. She was just with a simple clothing. She looked like the cleaning lady. She's cleaning her house. She's doing her daily routine. And he never told her that. He never told her that she's gonna have Prime Minister Abiy gonna be at the house. So these are the things that people will look at and say, "There's something wrong with this picture," because it might not be the norm. So one question for Jeff is that there are beautiful countries in Africa where we can encourage sending or on your side say, "Hey, I'm going to send someone in Tanzania," or let's say it might be Mika just representing and reporting on what you want to know. And when the journalism depend on the local representatives, I think we'll get a momentum to be heard on every angle of the African continent. So I had an understanding that if you really want to have Africa, United Africa, first let's look at the commission, at the AU commission. What is written? What's they promising? What they're saying?
Right.
It's like, you cannot talk about the Bible if you don't read the Bible. Okay, just because you heard a few here and there is hearsay. So you have to be really looking into it. So my question is, how can you broadcast that so people start grasping what AU means? Because people keep complaining, hey, it's corrupted, it's this. But from the journalist aspect of it, how can you extract that information? What is in the AU? What's the vision? In fact, today I text on WhatsApp on the beginning. What's the commitment of AU? And the rest, everybody can read it. And then I don't like to recreate the wheel. It's already there. Let's read it. If there's something that you want, you can add it or can omit it. Because a lot of people worked on it. So my question to Jeff.
Well, that gets into an area which is sort of out of my purview, and I'm not even sure if I'm the best person to even ask, because I haven't studied enough. I'm like your Bible student. I'm one of those students who hasn't read up on his Bible of the AU as much as I should, and I also not sure if I'm the best person to ask. What I would say, because there are various people, critics of the AU, who will take anybody to task in terms of how the AU itself has rot or corruption or lethargy or whatever, and rather than go into that, what I think has to happen more as a social movement that we had years ago, decades ago, where different disparate people said, okay, I'm on the same continent. What do I have in common with you? What don't I have in common with you? What can help our interests, and so forth? I would love to see that as a more organic movement. I agree with you that reinventing the wheel is not always wise, but that gets into an area of expertise, which is, I'm just a little hack writer who writes books. And sometimes I wake up and I'm going, how the hell did I get here where I'm talking about this stuff? Because, I just write books. I think there has to be a return to that kind of consciousness, though, where countries reach across, and it begins as a social movement, in the same way that Biko believed in Black consciousness and Pan-Africanism, in the same way that the greats, and I take issue with their economics, like we can debate Kwame Nkrumah's economic policies till the day is long. But the point is that those guys got together. That was because of Ethiopia. They got together in London. They were students. Jomo Kenyatta, Kwame Nkrumah, CLR James, George Padmore. They all got together to decide, how are we going to protest what Italy is doing in Ethiopia? And out of that, and they had different arguments, squabbling amongst themselves, because the guys who were from Trinidad, like CLR James and Padmore, would go over in what Kenyatta and Nkrumah would say. But in the end, they all united, and out of that grew some of the first early discussions of Pan-Africanism. And it's fascinating when you think about it, because you're walking around London and you walk near Soho and you go, holy shit, this is one of the birthplaces of Pan-Africanism. Well, I would love to see that spirit revived. And it doesn't even need to include me. Why should it? Because I'm over here in Toronto, Canada. If people want my thoughts, sure, I'd love to help. But I see it as growing from that. A young Eritrean activist, Simon Tesfamariam, has some thoughts on that. And I hope that he'll work out some architecture, because he sees a growing Horn of Africa. The time is right for a growing Horn of Africa movement of common interest to grow together. And of course, I'm going, how would that work in terms of the mechanics? But it doesn't matter what I think at the end of the day. It matters what people like you think. It matters how you want to form and go forward with that kind of movement or reform. And it's my job to stay out of the way, unless somebody raises their hand and say, Jeff, come here. What do you think? and I can speak to some issues and not to others.
Yeah.
But hopefully that will happen. And it's very interesting. Like somebody, if I can respond to a question that scrolled across, if I may, can I
is it this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody said, which I'm a little more. How do you evaluate the current rise of both sidism's reporting, and how do you see the ethical reporting of massacres, even though it's truth, to prevent retribution? Okay, that's a whole meal of a question, and let me break it down for you, because you have some massacres which are true, and some massacres which aren't true. I went to my cadre. Many reporters didn't. They just took the Amnesty International report and just went, oh, we'll just report this. And they didn't bloody well go there. And then Amnesty turned on a dime when AP started to listen to their TPLF fixers and the operatives said, oh, no, it was the Tigrayans who were actually massacred. Well, what they did was what some of us think probably happened was they interviewed Samri youth who escaped, Samri being the youth wing of the TPLF, escaped to the Humera refugee camps. So they ended up interviewing some of the very same people who were committing the acts, the atrocities. I went to my cadre. We filmed some of the victims. There's footage. If you checked out one of my videos, Mickey, you can see the video where it pans down a row of women, pans down a row of men. And some of these people can name their attackers because they were neighbors. Where else have you seen that? And yet at the same time, the TPLF disinformation campaign has done a wonderful job of creating out of whole cloth things which either are grossly overblown or never happened at all. And one of them is, for instance, the Axum massacre. Well, it's bullshit because Debretzi and Geber Michael texted Reuters and said, we've taken Axum. And that was supposed to be on one of the days that Axum had the massacre. And it gets better. So why wouldn't he ever talk about the atrocity if his side has taken it? I have footage, video footage. You can see it on my channel that was uploaded. And it was uploaded. I obtained the raw footage. And what's more, the footage was taken November 30th on one of the days that this supposedly happened, where there was blood in the streets. The church was defiled with atrocities. But you see people, it's right, oh, sorry, it was right there. You see people walking around during a religious celebration. They're going in and out of the church. It's sunny day. They're sitting on benches. Do you honestly believe, and they're clearly, the interview subjects are clearly talking about current events. This is not doctored footage. It can't be, because they're referring to current events. And the footage was uploaded December 4th, weeks before this massacre ever happened. And not one reporter, that one, not one reporter can answer me back and claim, well, if this happened, why do we have this? And I have the raw footage. They have no answer to that. They can't dispute that. It's right there. Because it was weeks before there was any allegation of this happening. Now, in terms of both sidisms, so you've got to actually, we're living in the era where, say, sexual assault victims should not be treated as suspects, but should be listened to carefully, and then things evaluate on the evidence. But you have to still take due diligence. You still have to investigate. And keep in mind, this is how bad it gets. I put this into a story, which is on the stolen audio, because my digital recorder was stolen from me, and then TPLF leaked it online and it blew up in their face, where a UN official talks about how the TPLF came into their offices and demanded the names of sexual assault victims and demanded the locations of safe houses, just so they could trump up an ICC case, an International Criminal Court case, against Abiy. Why this is not a huge headline-grabbing story, I don't know. But it sure as hell speaks to the culture we live in, where this terrorist organization can go threaten and try to intimidate victims and demand the names from the temporary UN officials during the temporary government occupation TPLF of Mekele then. So when you get to the both sidisms, that is actually works into their strategy. Because think about the way Africa is depicted in history and journalism today. Oh, those Africans, oh, they just can't get along. Oh, if only they ran things the way we used to run things when we occupied their land. Well, let's take a look at how stable Europe has been just in my lifetime. I'm 58 years old. I was, as a kid and as a teenager, seeing the last years when Francisco Franco, one of the last dictators of fascism, was in charge of Spain. I lived through Basque separatist bombings. I lived through the Red Brigade in Germany. I lived through, and this is not even getting into Islamic fundamentalist terrorism in Europe. We're not even there yet. We're still in the political bombings in the 80s in France and Germany across there. We have the Bosnian War. We have the war in Kosovo. We have Putin assassinating critics on a bridge right across from the Kremlin. That's how stable Europe is in 60 years. And yet Africa is this scary place with so much conflict and trouble. Well, really, have you looked in your own backyard recently? Sorry,
it's crazy. It's crazy even in that matter. I mean, CNN, Western media, they were saying nothing about the other side of the story and everything that's going on in Ethiopia until the movement of No More, became really big. That's when they had an interview with a spoken woman from the office of Prime Minister. But before that, they were silent. They didn't say anything. They were just bashing the government and siding with TPLF.
And we're seeing that it serves their narrative now because, of course, they're in a position where they can no longer admit that they're wrong. They got it wrong. So now you have the both sidisms, which can make it out of, we won't pay attention to the stuff that happened before. We'll just claim that now the TPLF are betraying. And interestingly, a smart young reporter who should know better, but who writes for Western publications, wrote of the TPLF as the classic underdog, now committing war crimes. Well, the TPLF ruled the country for 27 years. I don't think they were an underdog.
And nobody spoke about it,
So both sidisms actually works out for Western journalism's favor to say, oh, well, they're both doing it. When in fact, no, you got it wrong. You always had it wrong. You just can't admit anymore that you got it wrong because you'll look like idiots,
Yes. I have two questions here. I'll ask both of them at the same time. Is a war necessary? This comes from Eldana. Is the war necessary to get rid of Western grip on Africa? And another one, is Africa and Ethiopia winning this important battle with the West?
The scope of the question is open to interpretation. I'm not sure whether what you really need is a real shift in attitude and more truth, more light. Because consider that the West right now has this locked up. We are sadly, as much as Ethiopia seems to be rebounding and gaining military gains, and there have been touch and go, really scary things where I was worried about my friends over there, where they were taking Desi, but that was because of TPLF operatives who were living among these people for years and then just betraying them and shooting people in the back and so forth. And now that's the Ethiopian government forces have taken Desi back, I understand, or at least taken a good portion, have taken Waldia, so forth. So the thing is, as much as the military gains are in there, sadly, we're only just seeing a few cracks in the monolithic wall of disinformation where they have the media sewn up tight. You cannot get into, say, the pages of the Globe and Mail. They will not publish an op-ed by two academics I know who present a more balanced picture. New York Times does not want to hear from people who talk about Ethiopia's side. The Associated Press will not talk to them because they have Kara Anna, who just keeps putting out material which is pro-TPLF. So we have few venues in the West. I mean, consider what I told you at the beginning. For the very first time in a year, I'm on Radio Sputnik and actually talking about this. And if we want to consider RT and Radio Sputnik a mainstream media, that's the first time in a year that I've been interviewed. And that, you know, I can't think of another occasion where somebody's actually talked to the circle that I know, or for BBC, like maybe BBC, aside from that, had the Attorney General, Mr. Gideon, on, but it's few and far between. So are we, is it a war? Yes, disinformation campaign is a war. Are we winning that one? Too soon to tell. We're starting to see some cracks. Is it going to change how the West behaves towards Africa? No. What we have to do is we have to capitalize on this opportunity now and say, enough of what you're doing. It's time for change. It's time for all of Africa to wake up and say, we've had it up to here with your nonsense. We've had it up to here with your bullshit. And the thing is, we owe you a lot of money and you loan us things, and thank you very much for the aid, but that should not dictate our internal policies of how we treat terrorists or who we have. Abe was elected. He's a Democrat who was elected. I have no love or opinion on his internal policies. I don't speak Amharic, so, you know, it would be ludicrous of me to then voice an opinion. But here's the U.S. working overtime to try to destabilize a democratically elected government.
Yes.
How are we okay with that? How are we okay with that in the West? How is the rest of Africa okay with that? So it's time for everybody to wake up over that. This should be a Black Lives Matter issue. This should be an African Lives Matter issue. That's the war we need to fight.
There's another question here for you, Jeff. So, Professor Ezra asks, Jeff, can you talk a bit more about the African American community stories of enlistment to participate in the 1935 war?
Sure. The actual, where is it? I would have gotten out the real gentleman who was the master of that kind of information has sadly passed on, the author of The Sons of Sheba's Race, who let me use from his book. But at one point in August 1st or 3rd, 20,000 Black Americans were marching in Harlem on a hot afternoon for Ethiopia. You had enlistment drives across the country, in Detroit, in Chicago, in Los Angeles. Everybody wanted to go over. The reason why they couldn't is because the U.S. State Department denied Black people passports. You know, and people being who they are, they were naive and trusting, and they wrote to the government saying, how can I get a passport so I can go help Ethiopia? Well, in most Western countries, it's illegal for you to go over and fight for a foreign country. Don't mention that to Canada. I might go. So the thing is, because
they're listening to you.
But you can't technically do that. So, and nothing scares the hell out of, you know, white idiots in 1930s than a black man with a gun. So they didn't want that. So the sad thing is that the famous footage that you see, and sometimes it's in stills, where you see a guy signing up to join and enlist. That was actually, I'm sad to say, the organization that did that with the sign was actually a con. They're actually taking people's money, and they weren't going anywhere, which is sad. But the real fault lies with the U.S. government because they wouldn't let them in. The only people who managed to get over was the Brown Condor, John Robinson, and the creep con man, Hubert Julian, who was just a fraud. He was first invited to Ethiopia years before, crashed a plane, the prize plane of the emperor, into eucalyptus trees. They wrote him out on a rail and said, get the hell out of the country because you're a jerk. And he snuck back into the country and had an actual fist fight with Robinson in the lobby of a hotel, and he lied about it for decades afterwards and came back to the United States and then became a traitor, siding with the fascists. And he became the most hated guy in Harlem. They just hated his guts. Well, meanwhile, John Robinson was there all alone and building the Air Force. So the sad thing is that many black individuals, even nurses, couldn't go over. There was a beautiful young woman called Solaria Key. She wanted to be a nurse in Ethiopia. She ended up going to Spain instead, and she became a legend there. Lots of African Americans said, well, it ain't Ethiopia, but it'll do. And they went to fight in the Spanish Civil War on the Republican side and joined the Lincoln Brigades. So had things gone differently, this, can you imagine how amazing it would have been if more African Americans had been able to join the fight? Then it's so sad that they never got the chance. But after the war, many of those people said, okay, and they went over and helped build businesses and became part of the communities. And so that's a whole different history.
All right. Towards the end, there's this question here from True or False, I believe. Said the West could have benefited more from stable Ethiopia, but what they wanted when they supported the so-called TPLF was to destroy a Renaissance Ethiopia and thereby any developing country. True or false?
Well, it's not a true or false question. The fact of the matter is it's hard enough trying to figure out what the hell. If we're talking about the West, we've got to talk about who are the real drivers of this agenda. I have internal documents which were leaked to me by sources proving that the UN has been collaborating with the TPLF. And I have proof in paper form. I have multiple witnesses who have told me how they're doing shenanigans while the government was still occupying Mekelle, and they're helping to sabotage national exams. That was the UN. It was riddled with, it's been riddled with TPLF supporters. I have documents, internal emails and updates that show that the UN is looking the other way while even Ethiopian staff at the UN get beaten up and detained by the TPLF. Now, where am I going with this? So what can we say the agenda is of the UN doing that? Well, that's not the UN per se, that's individuals within it. And then you got Guterres looking the other way and say, oh, you're all conspiracy theorists with tinfoil hats. No, we're not, because these are your internal documents that prove that you guys are in on it. But the real instigators of this nonsense, I believe, are the U.S. government. I don't think Biden has a clue really what's going on in Ethiopia. I think that his foreign policy is being dictated by individuals like Samantha Power, who just yesterday, Politico came out with a story saying, this is Politico, and I can read you a line of exactly what's in the story. So this is not me, this is her. The senior U.S. aid official said that in an early brainstorming session with staffers, Power asked about ways to embarrass the Ethiopian government, given its role in the unfolding catastrophe in Tigray region and beyond. What the hell is Samantha Power doing in charge of an aid organization, trying to use as a blunt instrument to embarrass the Ethiopian government? That's not me, that's Politico saying that. So who's behind all this? Somebody just asked online and said, do you think the CIA is in the back of this whole thing? No, but we know that the CIA are probably involved. One of our circle even, I hope to do a story soon or in the near future on a guy who we're pretty sure that this guy is CIA because he's asking the wrong questions. It's like this guy's with USAID, but he's asking about drone capacity of the Abiy government. He's asking like, how far from the distance that these artillery hit like Mekele, like how good are they at taking? Why would you ask that be part of a U.S. aid organization? Somebody
Yeah.
mentioned, and I want to put this in. Somebody commented and
Yeah.
said, "I am Tigrayan." I don't know if you can bring that up. I am Tigrayan, but I'm
Exactly.
Ethiopian first, and that's what we always have to. That's what links back to the question of solving this conflict, is to remember that this is a political conflict with a lust for power at its base. They're innocent Tigrayans who are victims of all this, who are not siding with the TPLF. They're activists even in Addis Ababa who are Tigrayan, who don't side with the TPLF. They don't want this crap. Here it is. Hi, I'm from Tigray, but I'm Ethiopian first. A win for Ethiopia is a win for Tigray. And they're right, because they hurt their own people. The TPLF is doing forced recruitment, which the UN knows is happening and doesn't make public. And I have a document on that that proves they know about it. So we can't, as much as the Western media tries to conflate the TPLF with Tigray or Tigrayans, that's totally irresponsible and does them a disservice. They're innocent people who don't want them either. One of the top reporters for a CBS affiliate in Los Angeles, I don't know if she's left or if she's still with CBS, Hermela Aragawi used to be on the side of the TPLF narrative because she cared about her region of ancestry, Tigray. And then she started asking questions, as any good reporter does. And she was told to shut up and not ask hard questions. And she finally realized, oh my God, they're lying to us, and they're lying about everything. And now, I mean, they hate this because Hermela knows how they think. She knows that this is nonsense, and she's speaking out and setting the record straight. And that is a courageous thing for anyone to do.
Appreciate. This is another. It's Professor Ezra. Professor Ezra, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mika. What a surprise! What an incredible surprise to get Jeff Pearce on this show. It's a coup. It's a major coup that you've managed to accomplish, Mika. I know Jeff is a very humble person. I know Jeff is a very humble person. He doesn't. His humility is very inspiring. But I want to address. I want to help. I want Jeff to really tie down something for us. Okay. We know about the Tigray genocide, and we know about the issue of the Tigray genocide claims, and then also he mentioned it earlier about how it started soon after the start of the war a year ago. But there's also the other claim, which is the use of food as a weapon. So I believe that the two premises, the number one and number two premises that have been the excuse used by Western powers and Western medias. When I say Western powers, I don't mean the entirety of it, but I say for the sake of for argument, I lump them together, but they're not all the same. But that said, that the nuances are there. I don't want to dismiss those nuances, but the number one and number two claims were completely disproven. And then I think I'm sure on November 4th, 2021, I mean, the Western powers that were backing those claims probably had their press release ready and had their buttons, their fingers close to the button to press the button for the, responsibility to respond. Is it R2P or R2R? I forgot the acronym for it. I'm sure Jeff will help me clarify with that. But they were waiting for that. But it took them about a week or so to come back to us and give us their feedback on the HR report of the UN and Ethiopia. The Ethiopian government responded that night through the Prime Minister, accepting at least with some preconditions of these things. But what does that tell you? Like the fact that the number one and number two things were knocked out from that report. And I have reason to believe it's so hard to prove genocide because genocide is in your face. You can't hide genocide because the scale at which you have to commit genocide and hide it is so hard to hide. You can't hide it. And the number two is you cannot hide institutionalized effort to starve a region. There will be paper trails. There will be all sort of things that these investigators will look for so to easily prove and disprove it. And then so the fact that they disproved the number one and number two claims, of course, there are definitely atrocities committed. There are mistakes committed. There are all sort of things that are wrong in the world on both sides. I'm sure that there's so much evidence to when we come back to it, we'll take a look at it. But I want Jeff to help me really articulate a way for me to understand what's going on, not just in the report, but the way it was reported, the way it was not even adopted quickly by these powers that be that were waiting for it, like gunning, waiting for it, like so eagerly waiting for it, but took them a while to get back to it because it didn't give them the kind of tools that they were hoping to get from it. So, like, help us tie that for us, Jeff, please.
Well, the trouble is that this is all weaponized on all sides. I mean, if you remember, and I'm sorry, my memory fails. I got a gazillion tabs open on my screen right now, so I can't find it. But there was a politician. It might have been one of the senators. It was either Coons or Menendez or one of the others. And he says, or maybe it was the UN, and said, "Well, we're going to arrange for sanctions." And it was before the report even came out. Even before the report came out, they were already primed to take punitive action against Ethiopia. Well, what the hell is that? But yes, of course, it's war, and they're going to be. But people forget with the case of certain atrocities or war crimes, Ethiopia. Don't quote me on the number. I'm throwing out the number, but it should be double checked. Tried and convicted something like 38 soldiers of rape and atrocities, and I believe it was related to some of the violence that went on surrounding Axum. I mean, with the Axum massacre, to me, what I was terribly disappointed in the Ethiopian human rights organization's report, because not once did they mention the video, which disproves it right off the bat. And what I found more plausible was, ironically, the Attorney General's report, which said, no, the fighting was happening over these areas further out, probably that the TPLF were wearing civilian clothes. And we forget that. When the TPLF have casualties, they're suddenly civilians. When they win, it's soldiers as their defense forces. Mm-hmm. But have you ever heard of a massacre where the body count goes down each time? And so if you remember, Martin Plaut was the one who first broke that story, claiming that there was something like 700 casualties or dead. And of course, the number gets down lower and lower and lower, and nobody goes back. Nobody's been back to Axum to see, okay, what is the state of the town in? And I've been to Axum. I'm sure it's developed further, but you used to be able to walk it in like 5 minutes. I don't know how it is now because it's been years, but nobody's been let in to see, okay, let's see some actual damage. Let's see the damage. Let's retrace it, because they can't. Because they got video that proves part of this is nonsense, that if there was fighting, it would have been in other areas. So the trouble is, some of these human rights reports are weaponized for political gain. There was a recent report where Amnesty put out a story in terms of Amharas getting murdered by the TPLF. I did not RT that story. I don't plan to RT that story. Why? Because I don't trust the source. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it's Amnesty International. These are the same idiots that reported on other atrocities in late 2020 and early 2021 by phoning long distance and not verifying who the hell they were talking to. So quite frankly, I'd rather go there myself if I can and double check things. You know, we know what happened in Makadra because a brilliant photojournalist by the name of Jamal Countess is the one who went there. He does work for Getty Images. Only 3 media outlets used his, I don't know if any more have since, only 3 media outlets in the West used his material for months. They didn't touch his stuff. And he had eyewitness accounts, multiple accounts. And when I went to my counter, I was basically stepping in his footsteps, retracing some of his work. You get it by going there. So all this other stuff in terms of the reports coming out, there's an over-reliance on experts. There's an over-reliance on the academic veneer of authority instead of actually looking at the evidence of what's really going on. Oh, because this person says it from Leiden University, and they're based in Brussels. An academic said, the internet shutdown is, I'm going, the internet shutdown? I'm hearing from people in Addis. There's no complaints that I'm hearing about the internet being down. What are you talking about? Look at what happened when CNN said, oh my God, the TPLF are on the doorstep of Addis. They're outside the outskirts of the city. And what do? They rerun a clip from Ama Albagar's report from Tigray. They're actually using footage from Tigray of TPLF soldiers walking through the bush away from the camera over a report about being on the outskirts of Addis Ababa, when in fact there was fighting and engagement with the enemy about 300 kilometers away. And if you've ever driven out of Addis Ababa, you know, one of the other headlines said, oh, the TPLF are a day's drive from the capital. Really? You ever driven through, like, the outskirts of Addis Ababa to go anywhere? You know, a day's drive is a hell of a long trip. Yet they get away with this nonsense.
Jeff, if you like, you know, extend on that a little bit, just to on that, like the audacity and the incompetence, or even faking it.
Sorry,
the audacity and incompetence. So the audacity is like daring to lecture, you know, the so-called, the quote-unquote black African savages. That's, you know, that's one part of the narrative. But the second part of the narrative that I'm seeing and that's emerging is how blatantly incompetent even their doctoring, this thing has been over the past. Is like, you know, the foreign policy article I read yesterday, I'm sure you probably have come across it. Oh, how we should trust the West. I mean, like, and then you go through it, it's just racist after racist after racist.
I didn't get the chance to read that one, but I had to laugh at the headline.
Oh yeah.
But I didn't get to read the content. I'm sorry, I don't know what's in it.
No, but the headline, the content is no more substantive than the headline itself. I mean, I read through it, and I was like, if I was eating something bad, like I'm literally eating something and then I want to throw up, and I'm not somebody who really like I'm like you, like and many of, like most people that are like, I'm willing and ready to change my point of view given the evidence. You know, give me evidence, prove me wrong, give me, like, convince me. I'm willing to be convinced to change my point of view. If the Ethiopian government has orchestrated intentional effort to commit atrocities that has been accused of, and there's evidence of that, I'll be the first one to stand up against that. It's just not something as an Ethiopian, as an African, I would stand to support. No way, I will not support that. But the incompetency is it part of the way they see us? Like, is it part of how they perceive our intelligence and our ability to comprehend and appreciate the nuances and the complex? Is that part of it? Or is it just because it's just like, that's why I ask you the question, is the West winning or losing? Because it feels like, you know, you hear on the, like, the ground, on the grassroots level, people are like, this is blatant. I mean, I'm telling you, the average person is looking at this, really? And then the Ethiopians have done a very good job on Twitter doing comparison. Like, you know, as soon as they come up with the news, I wait a few minutes, probably a few seconds to prove, oh, this helicopter was shot in Syria. Oh, that was somewhere from that area. Or arteries that were placed in the city in somewhere in Russia were superimposed on to be from Dese. I'm like, that kind of blatantness. It's like at least for TPLF, but I'm talking about like Western, like BBC making something up to scare Ethiopians and having to be forced to change the headlines a few days later. They call it silent editing that they're doing in the background to constantly correct. CNN caught red-handed lying about Ethiopian Airlines. And then the Boeing, I'm sure behind the scenes, Boeing, a big sponsor of CNN, probably called somebody at the highest level and said, what the heck are you doing to our biggest buyer? And take that out. Edit this, edit that. So like, how do you square this level of incompetency and audacity at the same time?
Because well, I'll preface this by saying it's an interesting position I'm in, because the thing is, again, you called it humility, but the thing is, I just try to be as honest as possible. I'm no better or worse than some of these other people. I'm just a human being. I don't understand how I can arrive at these conclusions these other people don't. It doesn't make me a nobler person. It just means, what the hell is wrong with you? like somebody, I'll give you an example. Like, people say, you are one of us, which is the best compliment I can ever get from Ethiopians. Say, you're one of us, and they'll give me nicknames like the White Habesha, or they'll say something like,
White Habesha sounds good.
Yeah, and I love that. But I interviewed George Ayite for the book that I'm doing, and at one point we're having a conversation, and it doesn't matter what we were talking about, but he says, no, you are arguing like an African. And I went, wow, that's a great compliment. I'll take that. Like, great. But to be honest with you, I don't know why they think that about me, because it's just what I come to in my own head. And I think there's no humility. There's no curiosity. When I published Prevail, and I was invited to speak down in Silver Spring, Maryland. And there I am in a room, and I am the only white guy in the room. I'm going to lecture these people about their history. I was cringing. I'm going, the optics of this are weird. But they wanted to know, because they didn't get to know. They didn't have access to these resources. And so I give my talk. And when I go over there, people will correct me on certain things which I get wrong. And they'll say, no, it's not this, it's this. I go, okay, thank you very much. And you open your brain to learn. You want to know more. And you have to have that kind of attitude. I was invited to speak, Anne Fitzgerald. It was the first time I'd ever met her, actually, even though we're both in the same country. And we were both panelists giving this conversation. And it's not on the video that's online, I think, but during the Q&A, somebody said, why is the West doing this to us? And I said, because you're black. And unfortunately, that, to a certain extent, I think, has to do with it. Why is it that we treat African countries this way, but they don't treat, like a reporter, the person who was the host, we were having a pre-interview conversation before I went on. And they were talking about Feltman going on his little tour of other regions. And I said, there's no story, because his boss was going to send him back, possibly to cover Feltman. I said, why the hell does he want to do that? The story is not Feltman going to these other African countries. The story is Ethiopia's conflict. Does a Tanzanian think like a Sudanese? Does a Nigerian think the way somebody from Botswana is? Yes, there might be similarities in view, but you can't like mush them all together in one big ball and enlist them to go try to intimidate Ethiopia. It's ridiculous. So they never show even a modicum of the basic respect to your peoples to go, okay, let's talk as equals, blah, 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 blah. Why is the U.S. even sticking its damn nose at all into what by definition is an internal conflict? You didn't see Ethiopians rushing over during the January 6th storming of the Capitol going, oh my gosh, their government's going to fail. We gotta get them talking to QAnon. Really? Like, you don't see that. Never the shoe on the other foot where you go, would you do this to a European ally? Would you talk this way to a European ally? And in terms of the incompetence, I think, again, I'm old. When I started my journalism career, we had teletypes with big rolls of newsprint that went, and you had what we call rip and read from the wire services, and you couldn't take it back. So when you refer to silent editing, I've been guilty of that too, but I do it for grammatical mistakes, or I say, oh, I didn't make the verb the proper plural with the noun, and do that way. I'll do that shit, but I don't change the facts. These guys, they can, so they do. Why is it that Human Rights Watch again and again will do a tweet about Ethiopia, and they get caught, within 20 minutes or half an hour, and they put up a photo of Somalia or Iraq, and they turn out to be just going, what the hell is wrong with you? Why would you do that? Because they just can't bring themselves to have the basic modicum of respect that you give to another intelligent person. And I'm no saint, but the thing is, I'm looking at this going, well, what do we have in common? Well, all these people are black. So you arrive at that conclusion and go, yeah, you're a bunch of bigoted assholes. I can't think of anything else. Why in the age of Black Lives Matter do you have white people for the New York Times and Associated Press interpreting Africa? I'm not saying you can't have white correspondents in Africa, but all of them for the major newspapers and news services, with only a few exceptions. Like the BBC has a reporter who's usually fine from Uganda. The CNN has Nama Albagar, but they're still towing the agenda of the CNN and BBC. So it amounts to the same thing. Their editors are still white. The story that I always tell again and again is, I was working in a certain network, which shall go nameless. It is an American network. Its affiliate station in London. I spent 3 miserable months there. I was not happy. And there was a story that came down the line. This is 2000. Came down the line about Sierra Leone. The video editor screwed up the order of shots, according to my write-up of 30 seconds. And afterwards, the producer gave me shit over it. And he said, what were you trying to do? And I said, I was trying to explain what the hell this war is about. It's about conflict diamonds. It's not tribal bullshit. And the producer was a white guy, white English guy, and he said words which I will never forget. He said, I don't care why the Africans are fighting. Just show the Africans fighting. And I paused for 5 seconds wondering whether I hit this guy in the chops, because it's just like, holy shit. But this is a nutshell, is what they do. They want the drama. They don't, if you watch BBC Focus on Africa, you will get half an hour. To its credit, you will get half an hour. You'll get some of the drama stories at the beginning, but you'll also get stories of business, of what industry is doing, what's happening here, because they have to fill half an hour of time. So you get proper news. But why is it that you don't hear about other great stuff like that in other Western reportage? Why is there not that kind of, and this is why I keep pushing for a Pan-African network, which has the same T-Rex footprint of Al Jazeera or RT or France 24 that goes, boom. If you want to know what's happening in the Middle East, you go, okay, I'll tune into Al Jazeera. If you want to know what's happening in France, go and switch on France 24. You can get France 24 in hotel rooms of Addis Ababa. I have. Why don't we get that with a Pan-African network? And that would change things enormously.
Exactly.
I would love to help. Somebody give me a call. I think there is an Ethiopian operation that's going to try. I don't know what they're going to do, but my way of doing it would be, that you do more proper news and not be chasing drama all the time.
Yes. Can I ask my last question? And I think Sadeka asked this question very similar to what Sadeka is asking. But I want to really anchor it down from the Western perspective. Like, and its implication to particularly the US, where freedom of speech is the First Amendment is sacrosanct, at least for Americans.
Supposedly.
Supposedly. And then, of course, they are doing this like really blanket selective kind of silencing your voices on Facebook, Twitter, and these things. But I don't think they have understood and appreciated the implication of it. Because like if that is happening somewhere else, and before you know it, it's coming to you. So if they have that level of flexibility and power to extend and to really trample on their very own values for which they are founded on, what is to prevent them from doing it to somebody like you, who is based? I know some of the laws
They already have.
Yeah.
They already have. What gets forgotten is what you're really talking about is the issue of freedom of opportunity of speech. Because what has happened is freedom of speech has become more of a privilege than a right. Because now it's in a corporate world where they are the arbiters of what is permissible under their rules. My article about Axum, I can't even link to it on Twitter because the TPLF trolls raised enough of a stink that it supposedly broke their rules of conduct. Now, the story and the link has been there for close to a year, yet suddenly it's against the rules of conduct. It's bullshit. And what it is somebody somewhere in policy has decided, well, this breaks our rules. So they have become the arbiters of an actual historical event. And they're going to decide history for you. So they're already doing it to me. And under their rules, which we sign when we accept the little deal which nobody reads, to go on Facebook, to go on Twitter, go on Instagram, whatever, which, by the way, are only owned by like a couple of corporations.
Yeah.
You're saying, okay, you will abide by these rules, and this is how they get you, because they're not technically inhibiting your freedom of speech, but they might as well, because, okay, yeah, I can go to Speaker's Corner, in London and shout to the birds. I can shout to the pigeons my opinions. So they're not really intimidating, really harming my freedom of speech. I can go out and scream on the street. What they have done is taken away all the platforms that you can go on. They're already doing this to trusted academics. I know of one academic who has been disinvited from events at Howard University, at Yale, because a mob of TPLF trolls and advocates went and complained. So they've been deplatformed from that. And this is Yale and Howard University who should be able to say, we'll have who we like. Now, even if I object to the most virulent, horrible propaganda of the TPLF, I don't believe in that crap. Nama Albagar gave an address to the Carleton Journalism School, and of course she lied during it, gave bullshit, which I will go into. But I don't want her not to have the opportunity to go speak to Carleton Journalism students. Go ahead. I'll just do my own counter lecture, which I plan to do. The answer to hateful speech is more speech. If you have a Holocaust denier, go and keep reinforcing the evidence. Yes, the Holocaust actually happened, and I've met children of Holocaust survivors, so I know what happened. I've seen enough documentaries. I have evidence up to here. I've got books on the shelf behind me that go back to 1934 copyright that tell how the Nazis were doing shit. So you prove your case. So they're already at work trying to come after me, trying to come after Ann Fitzgerald, the Vasily Institute, to go after Simo Parvenian, the ex-diplomat, to go after John Abing, to go after Lawrence Freeman, to go after anybody who dares depart from their narrative. And to which I always say, if you're so goddamn righteous, why do you have to shout us down?
Yes.
Why do you have to deny us the opportunity to speak? Because we're not tinfoil conspiracy theorists. I have leaked documents from the UN that prove part of what I'm saying. I back up what I say with evidence. I have video which proves that the Axum massacre didn't happen the way it happened. Give me a counter argument. Then we'll debate. But don't do this crap where, we can't allow this person. when they tried to do this against my books, they were very stupid because they tried to go on Amazon and say I'm a genocide denier and all this. And fortunately, my supporters rallied and said, we'll buy more of your books. And so my sales went up because they don't understand that the easiest way to kill a book is to ignore it. You know, a book dies unless it's read. A book dies unless somebody pays attention to it. You can either burn it or you can ignore it. And if they just ignored me, you know, my books may not do as well. Thanks to their attention, I do better. So they're already
so they're perverting the rules, right? So Jeff, what you're saying that they're perverting their own rules for safeguarding that you hope them to have, to make sure that, you know, people are not inciting violence in a way Hitler and Nazis incited violence. So they're perverting that rule.
Sorry to interject. You're dealing with Nazis now. You're dealing with the problem is that people don't understand that. Yes, Germans elected Hitler in an election which was screwed with, because what people overlook is the fact that the Nazis went around and intimidated people at polling stations and beat the hell out of people. And so, yeah, they got elected, if you call it that. But yes, there were Germans who were Nazis. That does not mean all Germans are Nazis. But the Nazis put forward a program saying, we're the best people in the world. We're great. We're Aryans, blah, blah, blah. The TPLF have an agenda, and even in their founding documents, where they've identified Amhara as their ethnic enemy. They introduced a system of ID cards, which might as well be apartheid, and forced every Ethiopian to walk around with a bloody ID card. And they have their propagandists on their own television voicing the most ridiculous theories that say, oh, Tigrayan culture predates Egyptian and Nubian culture, and they're the inspiration. And any archaeologist or historian with their soul will say, really? And your evidence is. You're dealing with Nazis. And how does a Nazi react to criticism? It wants to beat the hell out of you first, and if it can't beat the hell out of you, deny you the right to speak. This is why Alula Solomon, whose Tigray media house puts out the most obnoxious, horrible propaganda, in the same way that Jawar Muhammad's channel in the States had people on television saying, go burn Amhara in their homes. These people I like to mock. Instead of parsing their lives one by one that gets us nowhere, I will gladly say that Alula Solomon goes around punching innocent dolphins on the streets of New York. I will say Alula Solomon likes to roll around in salad bars and sing I'm a Little Teapot, because he deserves that kind of ridicule. He is a bigot. He is a propagandist. And instead of taking him seriously to parse the points of debate, he lies so astronomically. Stalin Gebre Selassie claimed that a bullet went through 3 tanks and I think a lorry. This is ridiculous. The thing is, these people deserve to be objects of scorn.
But how come they're not deplatformed though? Like, you know, like I know I've seen even tweets and messages that says, "Oh, we are within range of artillery range of a particular city of hundreds and thousands of people living." I mean, they like blatantly just stating it, and nobody's like. So there's a perversion of the very same rule that Twitter means. They are perverting it. What is to stop that perversion from coming back and hurting hurting their own very interest in other crises and other occasions where the gun is pointing at you?
But you've answered your own question. The thing is that, you know, I love history, and the thing is, if people actually read their history, what did you get in Austria prior to the Second World War? It was run by a fascist dictatorship. It's just that Hitler went in and said, well, I want to put my own fascist dictator in. He kicked out one fascist dictator, put his own fascist dictator in. And the thing is, George Steer, who was a brilliant journalist, who later led the propaganda unit for the Allies during the campaign to liberate Ethiopia, Steer warned everybody. He said, You know, if they can do this to Africans, they will do it to you Europeans. Don't you see what's happening? This is a trial run for their tactics. You know, he reported on the bombing of Guernica. He reported on the bombing of Harar. And they were months apart. And he warned them on the front page of the New York Times and the Times of London saying, this is going to happen in Europe. He told them. And so, of course, they eat their own. The one thing that Mussolini could not stand was to be laughed at. And his own general, De Bono, was making a joke at his expense. Within a short period of time, De Bono found himself up against a wall in front of a firing squad, because you cannot laugh at these people. They don't like that. They want to be worshipped. They like to, and they will eat their own. And the part of the flaw in their strategy was they managed to con all of the Western reporters following their line. But as I've said many times, a hungry dog has no loyalty. So what do you see? You see Western reporters go, oh, you're attacking the Amhara. Oh, you're doing war crimes now. Oh, you're going into Afar. The Afars don't tie into this bullshit narrative, of the oppressive Amhara. Afars never oppressed anybody. Historically, it was Tigrayans who went down into the Afar region in centuries past and raided their territory when they didn't have enough food in lean times. That is a fact. I looked it up. I can pull up Baro Zuda's History of Modern Ethiopia, which is where I got it. So now we're seeing the both sidisms because a hungry dog has no loyalty. The Western reporter doesn't really care about helping you. He cares about looking good in terms of his dramatic coverage. And if your narrative departs from the line, he won't contradict it because he wants to make sure that he looks like he's right, but he will throw you under the bus to keep going with the both sidisms, and he still comes out looking good. You know?
Can I ask you one last question? That is a big question. One big question. I know we tied it down to the One Africa Forum's goal and objective: unity, peace, unity, and love, or love, peace, and unity for Africa is the thing that is. I mean, I know it's a very high-minded thought, but is Africa coming together in real term, not in perceived terms, a real term, a danger to Western powers? Not how they perceive it, but do we, and I am of the view that Africa and the world will be better off if we are united, if we come together, from climate crisis to economy to inequality in the world to all sort of issues that are really incompetently run by the West right now in the world. And not just the West, but also the Eastern Bloc as well, adding to that incompetency of running down our planet to the ground. And I feel like I am of the view, I could be completely wrong on this one, but this is my point of view. I hope I'm right on this one. If Africa comes forward united with that kind of African values, African traditions and culture of protecting our environments, protecting ethnicities and tribes and cultures and traditions and faith, all of those things comes to the table and the world is better off. But am I wrong?
No,
is the world wrong?
I mean, the thing is, people forget, I'm not an American, I'm a Canadian. So
Yeah.
I've had to live most of my life next to this, as Pierre Trudeau, the father of Justin Trudeau, said when he was prime minister, is like sleeping next to an elephant. You have this big arrogant power right next to you. And we are the second biggest country in the world. And when Americans or British people more often condescend to us and say, oh, you're such a cute country, I laugh my head off because I go, you don't get it. We have more fresh water than you. We have more trees. We have more minerals. We have more potash. We have more grain. Technically, we don't produce as much as the U.S., but we have more grain. We have more groceries than you. Go ahead and ignore us. We like that. Because, and it especially works with Britain, because Britain imports most of its food. They just go, oh, because they realize, oh, yeah, you're full of it. And the same thing goes for Africa. Africa has all these wonderful resources that could save the planet and save itself, but it needs to break away from idiots who unfortunately have my complexion, who want to tell it what to do. There's a wonderful book which I really urge. See if I can find it for you. Sorry, it's in the stack. It's called African Exodus by a Ethiopian diaspora writer, Prince Aspo Wosen Asarate. And he writes about why is it that Africans are kept stuck in their own country, and Europe and the West won't let them migrate for conferences, migrate for events. And he goes into all of this dependence and all of these dynamics in terms of what's keeping things down. Well, that's got to change. And you read it, and by the time you finish reading it, if you're a human being with a conscience, you are pissed off. You should be, So yes, it's very much a threat to the West's structure of things in terms of its power dynamic. You're seeing the last days of the American superpower. And you mentioned incompetence. I mean, look at what they're doing. I mean, they elected an idiot who literally suggested to Egypt to bomb GERD on an open line in front of TV cameras. Do you think that Eisenhower or even Nixon would do that back in the day? They were still, Nixon was still a racist, but he knew how on occasion to hide it. They wouldn't come out and do it. So you're seeing like the dumbing down even of the ruling hierarchy, where you're getting idiots. Why is it that you have George W. Bush, who's elected as president, who doesn't have half the intelligence that his father did? Hillary Clinton, who is the wife of Bill Clinton, becomes a New York senator. What qualifies her from that, apart from name and brand power, to be that person? I'm not saying she didn't do a good job. I'm just saying, just by these family bonds, you have a ruling aristocracy in the United States, which is getting progressively stupider. And Africa is a threat to that. Once you guys organize and say, this is what we want, this is what you're going to give us, otherwise, no. Forget about coffee, forget about all these wonderful groceries that you've been getting. Once you break that chain of development aid and figure out, and I don't pretend I have the answers to that, I just know it's got to be there, you're going to see a seismic shift, and it'll be great. And of course, there'll be bumps along the way, because unfortunately, and they get this wrong, even in how they lie about the history, it was the colonial powers themselves that screw things over. So you have these corrupt governors. I mean, for Christ's sake, the CIA got together with Belgium and assassinated Lumumba. How's that guy in? There's a book right behind me, which I can show you. Here's another book, which chronicles how the CIA was mucking around in post-independent Africa. They don't want you to know this. They don't want you to remember all this. They want to depict Africa as beset by despots and dictators, and nobody bothers to ask, well, who helped put them in place? Who got them in there? And once you guys solve that equation and join together, you're going to be an unstoppable force. And I think it will be great, because think about how GERD is going to change the Horn of Africa in the years to come. And there are certain powers that don't want that. Think about what will happen if you guys all get together and, yes, follow the values of environmentalism and good governance, which actually have precedence in the historical, they have historical antecedents within your own cultures. So that's all waiting for you. There could be a wonderful, bright future waiting for the planet and for Africa if you unite. How you unite is up to you, not for me to say. But I think I will gladly encourage that. And if somebody invites me to give ideas on that, great. But aside from urging you to do that, my mouth should be shut, just like other white allies until you call on us and ask us instead of telling you what to do.
Well, this is just the beginning, Jeff, and I appreciate Ezra for your question, but I'm gonna need to let you go for now.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I really
Ezra?
appreciate Jeff. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I have so much questions, and I hope Mika will do a very good job of maintaining this relationship that we've established with you to come back and then even answer some of the questions. I will continue to listen to you guys. I really appreciate
New
you.
book comes
Keep the
out
good
in
work.
April.
Yeah, we will be on it. I'm
New
just
book
waiting
comes
for
out
it.
in April.
Yes. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Sadly, I have to warn you. There's not much about Tanzania in it. There's a little bit, but not much. There's a lot of focus on Kenya, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Sudan, because it follows the intellectual legacy of Africa. And frankly, just through happenstance, some of the big heavy hitters came from some of these nations. So
You should check out Ali Mazuri, by the way.
it's not in there. Sorry?
You should check out Ali Mazuri. I don't know how I'm pronouncing it properly.
Ali
He's
Massacre
Tanzanian.
is in there, but the thing is, I don't think much of him. To be honest with you, I give my own critical assessment of his work, but I'm not a huge fan. And there are many people I know they'll rub some people the wrong way because I know there are huge fans of Ali Mazri out there, but I think he was wrong on certain things. So you guys can beat me up over that, like
no,
yeah,
no.
Oh yeah. But before
thank you,
Ezra.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. That's all. That's what I said. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it. But before I let you go, Jeff, I have the last like 2, 3 or 3 questions, because there's one question by somebody asked this question, but I think it's just a very short question, right? And the second question that I will ask you is that do you like what is going on right now and everything between the US and Ethiopia? Like, do you think that like the same thing that happened in Libya, it's about to happen there as well? Do you think it's the same thing? It's the same ways? It's the same moves that most of the time US does towards African countries?
I haven't studied enough of Libya to make that kind of comparison. That's on me. That's my ignorance. So I'm not going to compare it to Libya. I'm also very reluctant to ever compare this conflict zone with that conflict zone, because I think it takes away the uniqueness and what matters about Ethiopia onto itself, or what any African country is onto itself. I think because, for instance, somebody went online and compared what's happening in Ethiopia to Yugoslavia in the 1990s. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous, because what you're doing is you're robbing this country of its own unique dynamics and its own problems. You can't just say, this is African Yugoslavia. No, it's its own thing. So, and I realize that the way this question is phrased is more innocent and not trying to cause offense. It just wants to go, well, is this a strategy that they're going to use? I just don't think it's worth doing the comparison because the dynamics involved are completely different. You have the backstory of what the TPLF did to the country prior to getting ousted. You have what they're doing now. I believe the disinformation campaign is a huge element of this that we haven't seen. We haven't seen the like, where they literally have the Western media almost in lockstep, pushing a narrative which is just so far from reality that Ethiopians themselves are looking around going, what the hell? Like, what? Like, they're claiming what? You know, their minds just are blown by the amount of crap that comes out, which is just, it's like they're on a parallel planet, on a different dimension. It's ludicrous. You're frozen on my screen, so I can't even see your reaction.
Did you answer this question as well on the screen?
This one about protect the country with blood and bones, the very enemy is becoming. So, African leaders says it, not when Obama or Bush or Abraham Lincoln. Well, that's a case of, and I should note again that I don't speak Amharic, but what I'm told is that some very disingenuous translations have been done of what, say, Abiy says in terms of public statements. And from what I've seen, it's ridiculous because you're being held accountable by people who live in a country who went and did an extrajudicial assassination. Now they do it on terrorists. So, okay, fine. But they will go over to Pakistan and to assassinate Osama bin Laden. Now I'm never going to shed a tear for Osama bin Laden leaving the world. You know, I can remember the Twin Towers coming down, changed my life. So I don't weep for Osama bin Laden. I don't weep for when even some of the other guys who have been bombed and hit. But these people with a government that practiced rendition, where they will go around kidnapping people to take them to Guantanamo Bay, right or wrong, they just have extrajudicial acts, and they're going to lecture Ethiopia and its government on how it talks about terrorists. I got into trouble. Well, I wasn't in trouble, really. They want to make trouble for me because I tweeted out a tweet where they were whining about not getting groceries into Mekelle, and yet they were still perpetrating a war against the Ethiopian state. And I said, there should be a humanitarian, humanitarian corridor made so that those who don't agree with the TPLF could get access out of the region. And I mean, it's sincere. The Ethiopian government didn't believe in that idea. They said, well, there's no reason. This is their country too. They shouldn't have to leave their homes, blah, blah, blah. Where I got into trouble with some of these idiots was I said, you know, those who choose to stay, eat stone. And this went huge because, and of course they focused on that instead of my idea of let those who don't follow. And I have no apologies to make for that. Go ahead and eat stone, motherfuckers, because you were backing a terrorist organization. You don't get the right to say, oh, my banking doesn't work. I'm not getting the groceries from. Yeah, it's a war. Of course they mean, and innocent people, civilians get caught up and hurt sometimes in bombing. Civilians are getting hurt. Look at what's happening with IDPs in hundreds of thousands in Wallo and in Amhara region. Where is the care about those victims? Where is that attention? So, and we don't see that. So the invective and the propaganda war is almost as important, not quite, but almost as important as the real on the ground military cut and thrust that's going on.
Exactly. Yeah. Jeff, on a lighter note, is there any project you're working on right now that you would like to share with the audience here before I let you go?
Well, one, I'll make a quick note because somebody's going to complain about Ali Masri. Ali Masri said in his documentary, he said, Africans look inward. They don't, he stood by a beach of, it was either Kenya or something. Africans look inward. They're not like, they don't make great explorers. They don't make, and I listened to this and went, really? The Ajuran Sultanate was a power in Somalia, which traded with China. And you're going to tell me these people don't look outward? So the Ethiopian diplomats went in 1304, 1306 to Europe, and you're not saying they look outward? So yeah, I have a real problem with Ali Masri and something. But in terms of a current project, I hope to start soon a new history of Ethiopia, literally from Axum to Abe, because it's sorely needed. There hasn't been a well-done modern history of Ethiopia for the general reader in years. Barbara Zuda, an excellent, well-respected historian, his history of modern Ethiopia only goes up to the Derg taking over. It was published back in the 90s, and nobody's done a really good one since for everybody to access. And I had young people coming up to me, whether on email or in person, saying, what should I read? Because everything they want to read about their own history, is so partisan that they don't know who to trust. And they're coming to the Ferengi guy, the foreigner, to ask him, what should I read? So I want to give something back to the people. I haven't quite
That's amazing.
started yet, but I'd like to try, because save people's, and to be honest with you, a lot of Ethiopian history is sadly, well, not sadly, but it mitigates things, is written by people abroad, because the sources aren't easily available, or there are people who know their history very well, but given the state of the country in terms of they're dealing with a post-TPLF education where they weren't taught history at all, from what I understand, or at least the real history. And they deserve that. They deserve to have that back. So.
Well, Jeff, lastly, anything you want to say, share with the audience? Anything in your mind?
I've got tons on my mind, but you managed to get me to talk for hours on here. The trouble with getting a writer to talk is a writer will always choose talking over writing because it's work.
Yeah.
Out of work. So like, I'm not talking at all. I hope that whoever your audience is, part of the reason why I came onto your show, is that I hope to make connections with Africans of other nations out there, because to hopefully put myself forward to be open to having discussions and talks with them in terms of being an ally that can help when you need me or when you ask. I won't impose my views on anybody. I want to know more. I want to spread. I want to help what the gentleman was talking about earlier in terms of that Pan-African spirit. It needs allies. It doesn't need people doing oversight or second guessing, but it will need allies, and I hope you get them. And I hope we can start something. I hope something starts like a social movement that can go, okay, everybody come together, because take charge of the continent, even if it's in a spiritual, social consciousness movement, to help get Africa back under control of Africans, so they set their own agendas, especially on the world stage. So that's
exactly.
So
we started on the ground level right now, and we have a WhatsApp group of One Africa Forum. We have a lot of people who are joining in and just share different ideas and to talk. So I really appreciate it. And this, as I said, is just a beginning. I think we're gonna have you here, a lot of times if you're willing. And thank you so much for thank you so much.
Bug me in March, and we'll have the book out, hopefully.
Yes. Oh,
all right.
Definitely.
Thanks,
I really appreciate it, Jeff. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay.
I
bye.
appreciate it. All right. Bye-bye. All right, guys. Man, it's a time to appreciate Jeff and the time, his precious time that he has given to us, and the knowledge and experience and everything. It was just very productive moment. I think I'm gonna go back to watch this interview all the way from beginning to the end. You know what I'm saying? Because what has happened here is something that you need to learn and learn again. And it's always good to get different perspectives from different people. And as I told you guys, I'm in touch with different people right now. So hopefully this week we'll have another guest coming here and share his view and his opinion about Africa and everything that is going on right now. So what you gotta do is just stay connected with what we are doing here, and come here every single day at 9 p.m. East African time. We're here talking about One Africa, and I know this is the only beginning. Some people, you had questions here, but we didn't get a time to go through them. But we'll have another moment, I believe, with Jeff, and to just share everything. And I appreciate everybody who asked questions, and people who came on the chat and ask questions direct to Jeff. I appreciate that as well. I see the Chief is still here. Chief, I'm about to close up the session. If there's anything that you want to, say, you can, and then I'll be leaving. I hope you're still there, Chief.
Conversation, trying to really put all that in. Like you said, you need a review on what Jeff said. It was great. It was really an honor to have him and getting this uh, understanding on what's going on in the world and everything else. But I had a couple things that I was going to add about the why the West and coming to the Africa part. Listen, for me is first they harvested us and bringing us to the West world. After they harvested us and used us like you call it, shankora, the sugar cane. They took the sugar out of it, squeeze it out, and dump you out. And look at you. Okay, you want independence? You're not no more slave. They give you 40 acres and a mule. And after you got your 40-acre and mule, what you gonna do with it? So eventually you're gonna sell and try to survive on how to grow your own things, or else you're gonna go back to the old way of living, even though they so-called call it independent. But remember this Western and African view. Really, you go to the United States and you go into a convenience store. You're the only black in a white environment. The first thing that they look at you, is they're here to rob us. So there's a fabric that, as long there's a racism that is within, especially specifically in U.S. is going to be the one that's going to influence once they get rid of racism, which they not looking forward to do that because there's a fabric in there, and they always. It's so sad. You are in the 21st century, and we're still playing the game of slavery in a different form. Guess what? Whatever that comes from the history from the African continent, it's always going to be distorted. I can say what if I'm white and I'm in the West? Yeah, I just write whatever. Oh, there's no apology. Oh, you know what? You want to prove? I'll bring you more lies just to show that I know better. But unfortunately, we go through this. As long as there's racism, hey, this is the nation that has the black, white, Arabs, everything. We got all kind of people in Africa, other than Africans. Okay, but the thing is, the majority is black. Okay, that's the way they look at it. They're not gonna look at Egyptians to be part of Africa, for example. They try to separate us from Egypt. They call them the Arabs and stuff like that. But they are African. Egypt is Africa. Okay, so that's
Yes.
one thing that I was gonna add. Through racism, we suffered a lot.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be dealt with easily. We're the one that's gonna show that we are able.
I can't hear you.
Hold on.
Mhm.
Anybody can hear me?
Yeah, now we
Can
can
you
hear
hear
you.
me?
I can hear you now.
Hello.
I can hear
Sorry
you
about
now.
that. For some reason, I got cut off. So
Oh no.
just to
Mm.
say, in general, it was great that Jeff came in and show us, and I want more people like Jeff to come to this audience, and I'll try to get. There are a couple of people that I'm looking at that can help on this movement because when it came into Black Lives Matters, boy, it was like a scary movement because they're
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, it was not only blacks that came out, it's
Mm.
all race that came out on that
Everybody.
movement.
Mm.
Everybody. Then they came into to compare like white life matter. No, everybody got out because this was the case of black lives.
Yeah.
How they've been treated in the United States, and you see it. It's all over the place. And then from U.S. it became really so. It's like a firework. It just went throughout the world and Black
Mm.
Lives Matters start moving. So right now we are right on the tipping point to
Mm.
put the foundation to start moving. So that's what I said. We got to study our own African Union Commission on what's
Yeah.
been written. What are we? Is every citizen,
Mm.
every African citizen, should question your government. If your mouth shut, you bring it to our forums. You bring
Mm.
it to our attention. We'll have the same movement. Black Lives Matters is going to be African Unite
Mm.
Matters. And that is something that we're going to be it's like a trampoline. You just jump to the next level. So we have the power, but we have to know our own African Union Commission. What is based on? Is it across Africa? Like I said, I just put a little, and it's not a joke, but I meant it. We're taking this flight east west and then north south, south north. So you got to bring in all your really, really love and as well your honesty. You got to put your integrity, because every life in Africa, if any African dies for any illegal point, I want to ask the entity that killed them. I want to bring those people for justice. That's how we're going to be looking at one another with respect, mutual respect, and help one another. Bring your kindness, your African kindness. You're born with love. You're born with kindness. You've been taught kindness. It's just we got others that's so conniving that try to poke us on the back. But that's not going to happen anymore. We got to be aware. We got to be diligent. This is what my say is: one Africa needs its citizen. Each citizen is responsible for all activity, for everything that goes in your country. You are responsible. Put your voice out. That's all I got to say.
I really appreciate
bless
the
you all.
chief, the voice. God bless you, man. I appreciate that. For that, do you want to bless us with the closing prayer, if you don't mind?
Okay. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, thank you so much that you're bringing us together today on this beautiful Monday. Happy Monday for all. From the day that you slept on Sunday to the morning that you preserved me and being able to put my voice out, to cry out for love, for your mercy, to help us through this navigating through this really deep, deep, deep ocean and trying to emerge and take a breath again. Thank you, Lord, for giving us this opportunity. The people that comes together in here, in all the media that we have, all the negative should be gone. I pray, my Lord, that you keep us in the right direction. Lord,
Yes.
have mercy on us. We always your people. We're always looking up to you to give us this beautiful days and days with our children, with our family, with our friends, with the whole world. And for those that are still hurting this COVID-19, may Lord forgive. Forgive us again, again and again. I really appreciate that those that departed us, they are in heavenly land. For those that are suffering in the hospital, Lord, please have mercy. I know you already given us the mercy. I know you forgive us. The minute that I pray, you hear me, my Lord. I really appreciate, my Lord. Thank you, Lord.
Amen. Amen. Appreciate the voice. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you all.
Yeah, God bless.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys for the super chats that kept coming here. I appreciate for Juju. Let me shout out to you, Juju. I appreciate Juju. And who else? Where is it? Wow, so many messages. Appreciate this person right here. I can't read the name. And Biru Tawit Desta. Appreciate for generosity. Yes, appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And in the comment section, I just share the link if you are interested to join and become a member of Swahili Nation and support what we're doing right here for us to continue to operate and to do what we're doing. There's a link in the comment section there, so you can join. And also remember, guys, we Swahili Nation, we are going One Africa Forum. We are going to Ethiopia next year, and so however you can support the trip, please go ahead and support. I'll be sharing with you guys the link in the comment section. And let me just take a moment to shout out to people who have actually been giving. Let me shout out right now to people that have been giving. Let me shout out their names right here. Let me acknowledge their effort. Okay, we have a lot of people here that they have been giving. The link is in the comment section, just in case if you want to give. Also, you can just share, with your friends. You can just share any way you can support. The link is in the comment section. So I want to shout out to everybody that gave. Right here, all the names are right here. There are people they didn't write, the people so they wrote: Murga, Kemale, Menbere Tenkil, Sara Jembere, Tadese Alemayehu, Yosef Sesai, Adis Tefera, Johannes Mariam, Shewaye Selassie, Sam Gizacheu, Mengistu Yamane. I'm sorry, guys, if I don't pronounce it right. Alaza, have a mercy on me. Antene, Jibres Selassie, Sesai Gebre Mariam, Fitsum Zeleke, Alex, Berhanu Degefe, Child of Adawan Africa, Adisalem Ayano, Solomon Maru, Kalea Bedaso. Yes, so all of you guys appreciate. If you can donate, please go ahead and do right now, right here, or you can share in different social medias. You can do any way you can support. Please go ahead and do so, and it's gonna be amazing. Yeah, amazing. All right, guys. I want to take a moment again to thank Jeff for coming here today and sharing his experience and everything that he did with us. God bless him so much, and hopefully we'll have another time together to share some good stuff. Biggie is back. Biggie, you back?
Yeah, for some reason it got disconnected while you were talking, so I got up again. I just want to say, like you said, everybody that's on WhatsApp, everybody that put the hard work, all this time that he dedicated, my brothers and sisters, I don't know how much I can appreciate it. I'm reading through it, and it's amazing. You guys are doing an amazing job. There will be a lot more coming. I really want to thank you. And Mika, really, the architect, Professor Israel is there. So anyway, a big thank you for making this thing happen. Let's keep it up. This is a great job, and it's a great cause. I love you all.
I love you, brother. All right, I'll see you
Love
tomorrow.
you. All right. Talk to you. All right. That was my last words.
Bye, bro. Have a good day, brother.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, somebody gave me a compliment here. You called the name nicely. Thank you. Thank you. A few comment. Things like that. It can bring a smile to my face, or to somebody's face. Yeah. Yo, people. Thank you. If you want to join the WhatsApp group, the link is in the comment section, and we have admins in the WhatsApp group, so you'll see them, commenting. You see them talking. A lot of time, and feel free to share your ideas, your thoughts, everything related to One Africa. Please feel free to do that. And shout out to my new member. We just got a new member right now. Wow, come on, guys. Let's take a moment. All right, let's take a moment. Caroline Harper became a member in Swahili Nation. Come on. I appreciate you, Caroline, for joining and becoming a member of our family. That means a lot. It means a lot. I got a shout out to other members here before I leave. It's a commitment, because in that thing I always say that I'm gonna give out random shout outs to members. So let me go ahead and shout out to them. Okay, let me take a moment. And we have just somebody joined right now, I guess. Another person. We have super sticker here. Appreciate for the super sticker from Mr. Deb 2009. So appreciate for that. It means a lot for the love and support. Appreciate it. Thank you. So yeah, we have these people who join as a member of the family. We have Hayat, Kelly Brown, Caroline Harper. They just joined right now. Hayat, Kelly Brown, but I didn't see. Nothing came here on the screen. Show that she joined, but I think this person joined, and we have Google account. Appreciate. We have Yeri, James, Shaden, Professor Ezra, Tabol, Alma, John, Divine, Yared, Getaune, Akili Mesele, and Adis Channel. All these people, they became a member of Swahili Nation family. It means a lot. I appreciate y'all. And just to explain a little bit about the membership program, if you want to join, I'll show you guys right here. The link is in the comment section, but a little bit of explanation. There's different ways you can give, however you can. We have DC, $2.99 a month. We have CC, $5.99. We have siblings, $29.99. We have senior siblings, $49.99. And we have Swahili Nation partner, S&P, $99.99. All right, so you can choose however you want to support, however you want to give, and you can do that. Or you can use super chat, or you can use fundraising. You can use, there's so many different ways you can do. So if you cannot do this one way, you can do that way, or you can share with your friend, or you can just be here participating like this, or this way, or you can pray. All these things are the ways that you guys, you can you can support. Yeah, so once again, I appreciate. I love you guys, and that will be it for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow. We're gonna continue to have our normal live stream at 9 p.m. So we're gonna have 9 p.m. tomorrow. But during the day, sometimes I will come to do live stream randomly. So if you are there, come in. For you, in order to know everything that's going on, please turn on the notification button so that you may be notified every time when I come on, right? And I'll show you something here to encourage people to subscribe. I realize that I don't really do that, but I want to encourage people to subscribe. Let me show you something here to prove that. All right. Let's go to the audience here. The audience. Okay. Okay, let me do like this. Okay, let me share with you guys here. So guys, please subscribe. Some people, they come, they watch, and they run away. They don't want to subscribe. Come on, guys. All right, you guys, you gotta subscribe. You deserve a little bit of that, huh? Look at this. You see this watch time for subscribers, 72.5% not subscribe. Like, people who are watching this channel, 72.5%, they didn't subscribe. But subscribed is only 27.5%. So a lot of people who are actually following Swahili Nation and watch what we do, they're not subscribing. This is mind-blowing. You know what I'm saying? It's mind-blowing. So I don't know what you're waiting for. Subscribe. But if you're watching here right now and you haven't subscribed, go and subscribe right now. All right, this is your place. Some people, they're here, they're commenting. Some people, they come here even on the live chat, on the live stream, they share their opinion and everything, and they haven't subscribed. I think we're gonna need to have a little bit of limit that you can come on the live stream and share if you subscribe. So please go ahead and subscribe right now. You can just keep coming every time and then see what's going on, and then running, see what's going on. Be part of this family. Be part of this family, and you can do that best by subscribing. So please go ahead and do that. I'm gonna wait for you to subscribe until this graph. I want this graph to change, like 72.5%. I want to be subscribed, and then non-subscribed 27.5. Actually, on the other side, it shows like it's a good sign that a lot of people who are watching this channel, they didn't subscribe. But also, it's bad. You know what I'm saying? That people who subscribe, they're not watching. But people who they didn't subscribe, they're watching. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know what you're waiting for, man. I don't know what you're waiting for, but we start from here. Africans supporting one another, we start from here. I'm just going to wrap that on your face. We start from here. Some people, they'll be like, I don't know how I can give. I don't know how I can do this. Then go and subscribe. You can even subscribe. Shame on you. All right. I'm going to be real with you. Shame on you. Shame on you Africans who don't support African channel. And then you say, Western media. You don't support your own. And then you think some other people, they'll come and support you. Got to be real with you today. Get out of here. I love when I'm real, man. Oh, this is so good. Yeah, so go ahead and subscribe right now. By force. If you're not going to subscribe or willing, I'm going to force you to subscribe. Yeah. But this can tell you something, guys. This can tell you something that in 28 days, 72% of people who are watching, they actually didn't subscribe. So it's not a good sign. It's not a good sign. And for me personally, I hate hypocrisy. All right. I hate that. And I pray that I will never be hypocrite. If we come here, we blame what other medias are doing and we are not support our own, then how do we expect to see change? Right. We talk about things, but we need to act in order to see change. If all 64 people who are watching right now here, they subscribe, that's another case. All right. But if they didn't, that's a fact. That's a truth right there. And I'm going to always be real with y'all. All right. Okay. I think that's enough for today. You guys have been very kind to stick around until this time. So, but I had to throw out some spices a little bit. Anyways, guys, I appreciate. So I'll see you guys next time. All right. God bless and good night, everybody. I am out of here.